Start with the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for the victims of the Boston Marathon. Thank you. Okay. Tonight we're going to be presenting our proposal for 2014. This process starts just about when the voting ends. It's a long process, and there are a lot of people that are involved in the process, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the people that do help us in this process, starting with the school committee and the superintendent, Mr. Foyer. Thank you very much for your help and coming before us at least 4 times this year. The town council and Mr. Gonzalo. Mr. Gonzalo's been here just about every night that we met, starting in January. And the town council actually was quite involved in putting the budget together this year, and we want to thank them for that. And we also want to thank the department heads. They come before us just about every week. We have at least one. Sometimes they come back and present their case on what their needs are, and we want to thank them also for coming before us. What I think we have tonight is a proposal that not everyone's going to agree with. I'm sure the Budget Committee, we didn't agree with everything that's in it, but we came to a conclusion, and what we think we can have as a budget that the school committee and the schools can work with, the municipal side of the government can also work with, and what the taxpayers can afford. So with that said, we'd like to start the presentation. First, show you what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be going over the bottom line. We're going to hit some highlights on the school department, the municipal budget, the landfill, and the docket review. I'm not going to read every single line. You people can do that. We'll be here all night. You can ask questions. We'll answer them as best as we can, but we're not here for long discussions. The budget process ended April 7th, and now it's just presentation of the budget. Okay. This here is a proposal for the appropriation and the tax levies. The appropriation sum for the school and municipal expenses, set maximum tax levies to fund the appropriations, and that's how they're both done. I believe there is only one proposal this year, so we have vote for one proposal on our docket, but there is only one proposal, so we will be the first and only proposal on our docket. So
On the ballot.
on the ballot, I'm sorry. So please vote for it. The next page is how the appropriations and the tax and the levy is, we came to those numbers. The Budget Committee proposal, as specified by the charter, appropriates the money for the schools, the municipal side, and sets the tax levy. Again, I'm not going to read the numbers for you. They're all up on the chart. Hopefully you can see them.
And just note, this is how it will appear on the ballot. The charter specifies how the proposals shall appear on the ballot, and this is how it will appear on the ballot.
I'm sorry. The resolutions That's the second part of the ballot. And they stand apart from the proposals for the appropriations. The tax levies, the charter allows for a resolution to appear on the ballot. You vote to reject, approve or reject it. And the Budget Committee has 5. And we'll be going over the 5 of them next.
Yep.
The first one, and is a very important one. The language is kind of complicated, and it's kind of meant to be for a reason, unfortunately. The resolve that the expenses and the revenue budgets, both itemized by the account that support the proposal for the appropriations and tax levies, which receive a majority of the vote cast by the electors at this financial town referendum, shall be adopted as the Tiverton General Fund budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014. The only reason I'm reading this one is because this is the most important one. Without this one being approved, there actually is no budget. So this one has to be approved. So please vote for this one. It's resolution number 1.
Well, and this is why we need it,
It's definitely why we need it.
yes.
Next one. The town is required to approve a general fund budget that is balanced, and you're going to see that later on in our presentation,
Right.
where we'll show you the revenues and the expenses both do come out to a balanced budget. This is tied together by the proposal and the resolves, and we'll see that later on in one of our slides.
Right, it might be a good opportunity just to say that resolution number 1 ties all the line items that are in the docket, which this year is this nice salmon color and is available at Town Hall. The line item expense and revenue budgets are the building blocks for the proposal that the voters vote on. And the line item budgets that are the building blocks, they're linked to the proposals. So what resolution number 1 does is say for whichever proposal wins, the line items that support that proposal is the budget. That's why it's important. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Number 2, resolve that the municipal capital accounts be restricted, and this has been in it before, I believe. So it's just a follow-up to one of last year's resolutions that we had. And what it does is it just ties them to a specific account so that capital goes, whatever we have the capital expenditures for are used for that particular account. Resolve 3, the electors at the financial town referendum appropriate a sum of municipal operation and capital expenses that include an amount to fund the revaluation account. And what we did with this is we looked at the revaluation accounts, and what we tried to do is set aside money so that we'll have money in there for, we have a 3-year revaluation that really doesn't cost us that much money. But when we come to our 10-year revaluation, that does cost us quite a bit of money. So what we tried to do is spread that over the amount of time so that when we come to the 10th year, we won't have a large expense. So I think it's a good resolve and one that also should be approved. Any other comments?
How much is put aside for that?
It's in the docket.
I think it's 53,000.
It is
Plus 25 from the previous year.
53,000 is set aside.
Right.
25.
And what that also does too, by approving this, if there was another proposal that came in, and someone just wanted to put $20,000 in there, or $10,000, they could have, but that's not gonna help us in the long run. So that's why we looked at it and put in the $53,000.
Right. The actual dollar amount is in the expense budget. This gets to a reason why it's important to approve number one. What this resolve does is say whatever monies are associated with the proposal that wins, they get set aside. It's the restricted part of the idea that the resolve covers.
Okay, resolve number 4. And this is a new one. It's, what it does is it has a new restricted account for elections. And again, we're looking at the 2-year elections and the 4-year presidential election, and the cost of the 2-year compared to the cost of the 4-year are also different. So what we did is, again, put aside money so that when we come to the 4-year presidential elections, we're not burdened with a large amount for that 4th year. So it's spread over. So that one's kind of self-explanatory.
Right, and again, this resolve
Ties back.
creates the restricted account and ties back to Resolution 1, that whatever monies are in the line item docket expense get restricted.
And that's why we said the resolve number 1 was the important one, because these all tie into it. Resolve 5. This one is, I believe we've had for a while, at least 2 years, maybe 3. It's the restricted funds for Department of Public Works. And what happens is, anything that's not spent by the Department of Public Works goes back into a restricted account for paving. Unlike other accounts, where if we had a supply account for the treasurer, if that money wasn't spent, it goes back to the general fund. What this one does is, anything from the Department of Public Works that is not spent goes back and is returned for paving. So again, please vote for number 5 and for the paving account. Okay, next, we have a pie chart, as they call them, and it kind of shows you how the money is appropriated. Looking at the 45.9 million and the 47.2 million, we can see that the municipal side is still at 31%, our debt is still at 8%, and the school department is still at 61%. And that is kind of how it runs. It doesn't vary that much. There is a chart that we'll show you later on that Laura has, and it goes back to a 5-year average and a 10-year average. And I think that chart is really a real important chart to look at. We can see what actually happened in the town of Tiverton and what drove up the taxes in that time frame. So we'll take a look at that later on during the presentation.
Can I just make a few notes on this one, just to clarify for people? That you're looking at this current year, 2013, is on the left-hand side, and our Budget Committee recommendation is on the right-hand side for 2014. And the school last year was 61% of all expenses, and this year it remains at 61%. The numbers in the middle there are the increases from 2013 to 2014. So starting from the top, last year's total expenses, or I shouldn't say last year, 2013 was 45.9 million. Budget Committee recommends increasing that by 1.2 million, or 2.8%, so that total expenses for 2014 are 47.2 million. Municipal in 2013 was 31% of the budget. They had Budget committees are recommending a 3.4% increase, which still leaves them at 31%. So if you look down that middle column, you'll see that municipal recommendation is to go up 3.4%, and the school is recommended to go up 2.9%. So even though the percents are different, they still keep the same piece of the pie.
Next chart is the revenue changes. And like Laura said, we're looking at 2013, 2014. We see 45.9 million on 2013, 47.2 million on 2014. The total levy was 80% at 2013, it's 79% 2014 at $804,000 with a 2.2% increase. The local sources both stood at 6% with a $10,000 decrease or 0.04%. And the state sources, $399,000, 5.9%, with a 1% increase.
Right, so the state sources went up a little bit, and we cut back on the abatements, because last year was a full revaluation, and we had made an allowance for a lot of abatements. So that brought the piece of the pie that comes from the total levy, tax levy, down to 79%, just 1 percentage point.
It goes from 150,000 to 55,000.
The abatements,
The
yeah.
abatements.
Questions?
Any other questions yet? And this is what you came for, or you wanted to hear, is on the next page. The tax rate. Budget Committee recommends, calls for an estimated 1.99% increase to the real property tax rate, which rounds up to .038 per $1,000 of evaluation.
38 cents.
And 38 cents. So what you can see is the estimate, $19.37, and you see 1936.8, which rounds up to .38 for a 2% increase over the last year's budget.
Right, so it's our estimate that
And
the
that's
tax rate will come in at about $19.37.
37 cents
And that's,
per thousand.
should be around a 38 cents increase.
That first line is not 1.199%. It should be 2.00105%.
I think we did this, Roger, because that first line is $18.99 to 19.368. And if you have to add another decimal onto it, maybe that's the case. But that comes out to 1.99%. But we don't pay $19.360, 36.8 pennies. So we round it up to $19.37. And that, you're right, is about a 2%.
Okay.
And we had a long discussion on that.
Yes, we did. On rounding it up, we had a long discussion on rounding it up. Yes. Okay, now we're going to get into some highlights. We're going to start with the school department. This is something that the school and the town came together and decided that we, after what happened at Sandy Hook and everything else that was going on, that we needed a SRO, which is a school officer for the high school. And as you can see, and the municipal employee police officer and how it's broken down, the expenses. The $50,400 lump sum itemized in the school budget, you'll see that. And you'll see that with an offset. It's the last item in the expense budget. And the total cost for that officer is, the full cost is $71,521. Now, that's including salaries, education incentive, clothing allowances, holiday pay, insurance, Social Security, and everything else. Any questions? Yes?
That 28.7 million includes 5.7 million in state education appropriation, doesn't it?
The 28 or 21?
The 28 on the grand total, school department.
The one that was on the other page?
On the docket.
Oh,
We
okay.
haven't got there yet.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Can I just remember that? But I did include after this just a sample page from the docket, because I know this can get confusing, how the accounting for this works, that the school resource officer in the docket, these are just sample lines. You'll see little fours next to them. It's on page 13 of the docket. The little fours have a footnote on them, so every line item under the police department that where costs are associated with this new officer, all the costs are embedded in these different line items. And then at the very end, on page 19 in the docket, at the end of the expense budget, you'll see that offset for the school resource officer with a negative expense or a credit of $50,400, and that's the school share.
Excuse me.
Yes?
He travels to all the schools, thank you.
What was that?
He goes to all the schools.
All the schools, okay.
Not just the high school.
Not just the high school?
Thank you.
Right, he'll be physically located
At the high
he or
school.
she will be physically located at the high
At the
school.
high school.
Um, Is that clear enough? Okay.
Okay. Next one. The total school appropriation increased $812,000, as we've seen in the previous slide. The salary account was $330,000 of that. The shared regional cost for special education, that rose by $400,000. And there's actually, there was a lot of discussion on that because there was some legislation by Mr. Representative Canario, I believe, about the capping of what it would cost us for special education outside of Tiverton. For instance, if we had to send a child to I believe it's the Bradley School, we're capped at a 4%. You know, we can only raise our taxes by 4%. Yet they have the ability to charge us whatever they want to charge us. If they want to increase it by more than 4%, they have that ability. So he has legislation in to cap what can be spent, what they can charge to us. And I think it's a good piece of legislation. They had some decreases in health insurance, premium reductions. They in with the collaboration, I think it's called, both the schools and the municipal side. And I think you'll also see the decrease when we get to the municipal side of it also. The capital expenditures, believe that the wastewater treatment facility plant is in progress, or working on that one. The auditorium seats, I don't know if they're completed yet, but I know that they were started.
They're completed.
They're completed also?
We'll find out next
They're
week.
gonna be moving.
Okay.
No more tape.
The fire suspension and computers. And I think they came up with a great idea in doing a facility study, which is going to tell them exactly what their needs are going to be.
I'd just like to point out that that facility study is not in the budget. And the fire sprinkler suppression system is coming out of the surplus. It's not in our operational
Right.
piece of the budget.
Right, I think it's important to note Mr. Eric, the superintendent, brings up an important point. That's why we have this down on the bottom as a separate bullet, and you'll see it when we get to the docket review, that the school is using monies left over from prior year's appropriations to do necessary capital projects, so that all these capital improvements are taking place using prior monies that were left over from prior year's appropriations. And the school committee saved and worked to come up with the money they needed to do the wastewater treatment, and some of this money that's out there that they're using for capital is from the contested money over the past couple of years between the town council and the school, and those monies are being put to good use, and it benefits the town because it is not built into the budget. But yet, all these projects are being done, and school is managing their money to the benefit of the town.
Do you have any copies of these slides available so we can add notes to them?
We didn't print anything out before, but I am going to ask that it be put up on the website tomorrow, so you'll be able to print
It
out.
would help me tonight to write in on line 14.
I apologize for that.
It would have been helpful.
Well, we didn't finish it until yesterday, so we're all volunteers,
It's working, it's been a work in progress.
and color printing is expensive.
Okay,
You printed it in black.
You missed the colors then.
next chart. Municipal expense
Yeah.
increases. First one we have is the salary accounts. And the increase will show on the line account items. Increase appears in the salary accounts, further negotiation needs under the town council budget. Insurance was an increase also, and that was kind of due to projected, last year we under-projected for insurance. So this year, hopefully, we got it right.
Can I just make a jump back to salaries just for a minute? Because I think it's important for everyone to know that everyone in town, there is money in the budget for all of the contracts that have been signed where they have received raises, and for those that will be going through negotiations, the money has been put into the budget, that all of the town employees, the funds have been budgeted for raises, and including the school department, and that all was done, and still keeping the levy increase to a little over 2%, I think is pretty laudable on everyone's part. And just to get a sense of it, we didn't put this number in here, but leaving out the department heads and some other salaries, the increase just on the municipal side is close to $300,000. So that's, I think, important to note.
I think we mentioned that before.
Yeah.
The police department increased $289,000, or 10.7%, and that was partially due to the school resource officer, where 3 dispatches we're adding on, and I believe we're adding on 3 new police officers. And that entails a long process.
Right, we have retirees that,
We have retirees, I'm sorry, we're not increasing them, 3 people are retiring
We're increasing the police staff by 1,
by 1,
and increasing the control center operators by 2.
so it's 3 total.
Yeah.
Okay. But the process to get that officer back on the road is about a 9-month process. By the time we get him into the academy, through the academy, and then on the road. So while we're doing that, we're incurring overtime at times. So,
and just so that we did this for the police and the fire, we have a little,
chart.
few statistics that I think have been in the paper for the police department, crime statistics in Tiverton, and why the demand is there. the first one is broken out by crimes against persons, property, and society, and you can see that the big lump is crimes against property, which was up 10% from 2011 to 2012. And then the second, type 1 crimes, these come from the FBI. I've forgotten the technical term for it. But of all the towns on the island, Tiverton has the highest number of type 1 crimes in 2011, and we don't have all the other towns for 2012, but for 2011, the only other town/city on the island that had more type 1 crimes than Tiverton was Newport. More than Portsmouth, Tiverton, more than Portsmouth, Middletown, Bristol with all those people.
And
It was just kind of a revelation for me to see these numbers.
Mhm.
And that's because we're chasing the ball.
Correct.
Right. And you have the fire also?
That comes later.
Oh, okay. Next slide. Police pension had an increase of $125,000 or 17.9%. Now, there was a lot of discussion on this particular item, and there is a slide that we'll show you in a little while on why we believed that it needed the extra $100,000 that we did put into it. We have concerns on the audit study, and, you know, we're not doubting what the audit says, we just have concerns about the study that was done.
I think the actuarial.
The actuarial raised some concerns, raised some flags with this budget committee. And we decided it would be prudent to increase the unfunded liability by that $100,000. And again, we'll be able to show you that slide.
Well, I put it right afterwards, so we can look at it next. I want to make sure that people, the actuarial study is the baseline for the improvement plan that's up at the state, that presumably they'll approve. And that's a hugely important, complicated study. It was the audit, when we looked at the audit, that's the one that kind of raised flags and led the budget committee to think that there may or may not be issues with the actuarial study, but we just weren't comfortable with the funding level. And hopefully we'll find time to sit down with the council and so that we're all on the same page. But if you look at the audit, this is the page from the audit from 2012. And what we saw was that there was more money going out than was coming in, which sometimes happens, but it was the level that was concerning to us, as well as the performance, the investment performance.
Now, they are out actually seeking a new investment company.
Advisor.
Right. So hopefully that will be able to help this process in the future. But we just thought, you know, looking at it from where we sat and, you know, what was going out and what was coming in, we thought we had to fund it by another $100,000.
It's an important obligation.
It is. Okay?
Okay?
Any questions on that one? Capital increases. We have a couple of new items in the fire department. The monitors and defibrillators. We actually did site visits at most of the locations. And what we were shown at the fire department on the monitors and the defibrillators, we definitely needed 2 new ones. So that was, is in the budget. The air packs for the air bottles. Replacing half the roof on Station 2, and a radio system repair. And in the police department, upgraded departmental computers. And this year, we're purchasing 3 vehicles. We're on a 2-3 cycle, and that would be the $82,000 that you see for the police. for a total of $214,000. And then on a reoccurring major time finance payments, they stay the same, except for the DPW. We'll be purchasing a six-wheel truck with a plow and a sander. This past winter has put a burden on our DPW trucks. I believe we lost 3 trucks in one snowstorm.
Not
So-
completely,
not
but
completely
they were
lost,
down
but
for
the rear
damage.
rear axles were broken, and so what we're trying to do is help them along also by buying one truck this year. So the total comes to $221,045, and the grand total for the municipal capital is $435,045, for an increase of $101,283, a 30% increase. Now for some good news. We got some decreases. Like I said before, in the municipal side, the health insurance decreased by $137,000, and that's with the new contract negotiations that have been going on. Streetlights, council took a look at this, and I think we shut some off a few years back. And they took a look at it again, and they found that we can shut a few more of them off with a savings of $10,000, or 6.3%. Heating, save a decrease of $11,000, or 15%, and that was at the Town Hall, the Senior Center, and the North Tiverton Fire Station, switched from oil to natural gas. And a decrease in $10,000 in gas and oil. And the Budget Committee, we're anticipating $3.67 a gallon for gas and $3.87 a gallon for diesel. And we're,
I have a question on streetlights.
yes,
I complained and called the electric company about a light out in front of the Fort Parkin School. And you know what they told me? It was one that was specifically turned off because it wasn't necessary. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Having a light in front of a public building, especially a school, that's turned off.
How long has that light been turned off?
A year?
Well, the last time we shut off any lights was between 2 or 3 years ago. So, and if you give me the poll number, I've got the poll numbers that we shut off. I can verify that. But I
Well-
doubt very much. that we-
Can I just, I would just respond, that's a concern that needs to come before the council. Budget Committee has no control over which streetlights are on and off. And just remember that we're on the television, so if you have comments, come up and use the microphone. But to the
All right,
point,
I'll talk to Jim.
yes.
yeah, I think
Yes.
that would be the appropriate way
Yeah,
to
if
get
I'm
it
not
resolved.
mistaken, we haven't had any new streetlights turned off.
In 3
This,
years.
right, this savings was realized from previous decisions made by the council, and then we could see, you have to have a certain amount of time to see how much money you are going to be saving. So I want to give the council credit for the projected changes in the health insurance and the streetlight and the heating. That was made possible by those energy grants that you got, Jim, if I'm not mistaken, to change from oil to natural gas. So these were all really good things that happened to keep our expenses down.
Okay.
Okay, and on the gas, it's here that I put in, we did a lot of adjustments, the Budget Committee did, on the gas and oil in total. If you look at the fire department, the police, and DPW, it's around $250,000 in total that we budget for oil and gas for vehicles. So the Budget Committee spent quite a bit of time looking at that, and really the only, I shouldn't say the only, the fire department was, I would say, adjusted it down the least of all of them because of, and here's the chart for the fire department, their increased usage. You can just see from this simple chart that the fire department provided us, the incident response total. So you can see in 2008, going back 5 years ago, there were 810 calls for fire, 1,458 calls for medical, for a total incidence of 2,268. And that goes up to, 2012, which is, there were 1,458 medical in 2008, and in 2012, there was 1,784. That's a big increase. So I thought that was revealing as well.
Also, on the bottom of that, the previous chart, there's a new card-based gas metering system.
Oh, yeah.
That we're hoping to have installed at the DPW. And that way, anyone who goes down there for gas will have, I believe it's going to be a swipe card
And a key.
and a key. So that we'll be able to keep track of who's down there gassing up and who's not. Right now, we're using slips of paper and they're being turned in. But I think with the swipe card based metering system, we also might see an improvement, so.
Well, it'll certainly help with budgeting going
It will
forward.
definitely help us with the budgeting process. Okay. I have more highlights. Legal department, decrease of 45,000 or 14.9%. And what we did with that one is, there was a lot of discussion on that also, but we took into account historical norms that we've had and things that are behind us now. We don't know what the future's going to hold. Things could come up, and we might have litigations that we'll have to pay for. But there are ways that we can get the money if need be. The planner's salary, another hot one for the Budget Committee, a decrease of 48,000 or 70%. And we've came to a solution on that one by putting $20,000 into the salary account for a consultant.
Or a part-time.
Or a part-time town planner. We had discussions with the planning board, and some of us weren't convinced from the discussion with the planning board that they really wanted a planner or needed a planner. And if you look at the sheet that was circulating from the planning committee themselves, 3 of them were for a planner, 3 were not, 2 didn't care, 1 was no. So it kind of left us like, where do we go? So we kind of took the advice of the planning board and came up with the partial planner.
I would just note that there was...
There was
this-
quite a bit of discussion.
There was a lot of disagreement. There were many on the Budget Committee that felt strongly that we needed to have a full-time planner. There were others that didn't think we needed a full-time planner. And this was a compromise that we did.
Okay, the next one, the landfill closure account. And this is a chart that you'll see. And what we did was the date for the landfill closure, I think it changed actually as of Monday night. Is it 2000,
That's capacity.
capacity at 2017 now?
Right, but that's not necessarily the
That's not
close
most-
date.
Yes, right. So we're going with the closing date of 2018. And what we did was, you'll see the chart with the $100,000 added to the general fund and $100,000 taken out of the general fund. And you'll see that by 2018, on the left, it'll be at $8.8 million. And on the right, it would be at $8.3 million. Now, again, that's the estimate of $400,000 going into the landfill closure account. I believe last year, $422,000 was actually put into the landfill closure account.
Right, this is assuming that every year, the pay-as-you-throw the net income from pay-as-you-throw goes right to the landfill account. And the Budget Committee looked at this and used a conservative estimate of $400,000 a year. It's 5 years out that we're talking about, and there's still rough estimates that we expect it to close in 2018, and we expect the cost to be somewhere between 8 and 10 million, which is a big range. And as Dave Perry says, last year, fiscal year 12, it was about 425, 428 or something like that, that was the total for pay-as-you-throw. So we looked at two different scenarios, both assuming 400,000 pay-as-you-throw, and one scenario looking at earning 3% interest, and the other one earning 3.5% interest, and decided that, let's be conservative and use 3% because that's less. The average investment earnings of the landfill account over the past 4 years is a little over 3%, 3.1 something. So conservative interest, conservative income from pay-as-you-throw, and by June of 2018, without adding any tax money into the picture, without 100,000 general fund expense, we should have around 8.3 million. If we taxed ourselves for an additional 100,000 to put in to the landfill account to supplement the pay-as-you-throw, we would have 8.8 million in 2018. Presuming all these loose estimates work out over that cycle, so, you're really playing a guessing game, but I think we were all comfortable in saying that we don't need to tax ourselves for an additional 100,000 to supplement the pay-as-you-throw for now.
For now.
But we need to keep looking at it.
And it's something we'll look at every year.
Yeah, because as we get closer to the date, we'll have a better sense of exactly when it's going to close and what the parameters for the closing are. We'll get a better cost estimate, et cetera.
Very good. Okay. I think now, we get into, want to take a break? Do you need a break?
I don't need a break if we
You
want to
don't
go
need a
on to the
break?
docket, and
We'll go on to the docket.
let me pull that up, unless there are questions and we want to pause.
Any questions
No?
so far? Okay. This would be page one of the, it's actually not page one, but it's just the table of contents.
Right, page one is the proposal that we had the slide for, the proposal that's going to appear on the ballot and the resolutions that will appear on the ballot. This, again, is this salmon-colored, what we call a docket, that you can pick up at Town Hall or the library, various other places.
Okay, next slide. These are the, page two. It's a local taxation summary. Proposed amount to be raised by local taxation, the tax levy. And what it does is it has the total expenditures, less the total anticipated state and local funding, equals the required taxable before uncollectibles, which is $37,464,966, plus the anticipated uncollectible taxes, or the abatements as we showed you in that graph before, of $55,000, equals the proposed tax levy of $37,519,966, or 2.19% change over last year. Less proposal tax motor vehicle tax levy of $1,409,000, and the equals the proposed maximum real intangible property tax levy of $36,110,966, or 2.19%. And then you have the estimated real intangible probable tax rate, property tax rates, proposed maximum real intangible property tax levy, $36,110,966, and then divided by the estimated town real and tangible property value, $1,864,500. And that equals estimated real and tangible property tax rate per $1,000 value of $19.37.
This gets to the previous slide that we showed of the tax rate where it's 19.36,
Way back.
well, 36,
Okay.
368, yes, thank you. 368 would round it up to $19.37. So that 1.99% increase you see in the estimated change in the real property tax rate, if you just do that percent change yourself between 1899 to $19.37, you'll come up with 2%, not 1.99.
Next slide. This is the proposal,
Right, this starts the
the docket.
the line item expense budget.
And it starts off on top at the school department. The total school appropriations, $28,729,425. Yes.
That's where my question came in, is that, does that include the $5,755,375 from the State of Rhode Island Education Department?
Are you talking about the state education aid?
Yes.
Yes, it does. It's one appropriation.
Right.
It's all combined.
So why isn't it listed there? 2 years ago, it was listed there for the previous 20 years. Now suddenly it's being buried somewhere.
Well, it's not being buried somewhere. We went through a rather lengthy legal battle that cost the town close to $100,000 to get that straightened out.
It
That
hasn't
the
been
s-
straightened out.
The
It has
school,
not been adjudicated by the courts. The judge refused to adjudicate it. So it reverted back to something that still is in the courts.
I would just say this, Mr. Bennis. The opinion of both lawyers, school department lawyer, town lawyer, and the courts, it is one total appropriation. There is one pie, that's the general fund. Big pie, general fund, two slices. One big piece to the school, another piece to the town. That's the way it works. School gets one appropriation.
So does
So
that
if-
mean that the money from the state is coming to the town and not the school department?
The money goes into the general fund. All the money goes into the general fund. And what the voters are doing when they're voting on that appropriation and tax levy is appropriating monies from the general fund. So the state education aid comes into the town, into the treasurer's office, and it gets deposited into the general fund. So we're appropriating that piece of pie. When we vote on that proposal for the appropriations and tax levies at the financial town referendum, we're saying the school gets this chunk and the town gets this chunk. Is that,
Yep,
okay.
it's a total
But
appropriation.
not all money for the school department comes into the general fund.
Everything that this appropriation deals with does. Remember, we're dealing with the general fund. We're not dealing with community development block grants. That happens outside of the general fund. We're not dealing with the federal Title I whatever grants. That happens outside of the general fund. The financial town referendum deals with the general fund appropriations, tax levies, and budgets.
Okay. Down to the bottom line, we have the debt service, the grand total, $3,629,020. And what we did on the bottom is, you can actually see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 schools and the TIF area sewer debt and the maturity dates on when those will be paid off.
We just added, yeah, a little information on the bottom of
Little
the debt
information on the
service
bottom of
page.
page 3.
Do you want to go through it line by line? Does anyone have specific?
Anyone have any questions on any one of the line items? If not, we'll go to page 4. This is the same chart that we had previous with the capital, with the defibrillators, air bottles, half the roof, and that's a total of $435,045. Any questions on that one? Page 5, town clerks, $251,856. Town council, $92,361. And the town administrator, $159,275.
On the bottom of page 5, it might be worth noting that the council had wanted to put $60,000 towards a consultant
For the industrial.
for the
park.
industrial park that the budget committee didn't agree with, but it didn't seem to be a huge sticking point.
Page 6. For the Board of Canvassers, $22,600. Town Hall operating expense, $25,200. Legal services, $256,500. And municipal court, $25,852.
You can-
And we
yeah.
have the, on page 6, the election account. That ties back to what we spoke about at the beginning.
The
The
resolution.
Resolution number 4. As you can see, it's $15,000.
So approving Resolution 4 sets up the restricted account. So the 15,000 on that second line for elections would be transferred to the restricted elections account. And then over the 4-year cycle, hopefully there's enough in there that there'll be monies available to pay for that big jump for the 4-year presidential elections.
And what we're trying to do is just think forward a little bit so that we don't get burdened with large expenses. On page 7, probate court, $10,800. The code enforcement, $106,347. The planning department, $64,124, and you can see the $20,000 that was put in for the planner. Planning board, $29,800. Any question on those? Page 8, zoning official,
Hold on one second, I just wanted to, yeah, on page 7, on the bottom of page 7, you'll see there's a line under the planning board for comprehensive plan consulting, $10,000, that's new. That's kind of an important thing, and also back under the clerks, if I just get back up there. Right, advertising, zoning, rewrite. We have the comprehensive plan rewrite that's coming up, that we need to budget monies for consulting services, and that's why that's in there. Sorry.
it's okay. Page 8. Zoning official, $7,372. Economic Development Commission, $6,350. Town sergeant, $1,500. And financial town referendum, $12,500. Grand total, general government, $1,072,473. Any questions on it? Page 9. Tax assessor, $150,925. The revaluation, $53,000 that we spoke about before, and that's going to be in a restricted account.
And just make a couple of notes here. You have 2 footnotes on page 9. The first one deals, or footnote number 2, deals with 2 line items, accounts that used to be under the planner and have moved now to the tax assessor's bailiwick, the GIS web hosting and the GIS updates. So if you take this 2014 beautiful salmon color docket and compare it to last year's brown docket, you'll see those 2 lines under the planning department, so it may be a little bit difficult to do the math. That's why we moved the whole thing up here. And the revaluation, again, that's resolution number 3.
Right.
So that is approving the restricted account, and the $53,000 that's in the line item will be transferred into that restricted account.
Okay, so the grand total for treasurer was $199,894. Page 10. Tax collector, $117,828. Tax sale of $3,000. The insurance, $2,533,275. Audit of the town accounts, $23,760. The police pension, total police pension, $825,000. And we have the total other municipal pensions for $354,306. So the total pension plans are $1,179,309. And that's for the AFSCME Fire Department and everyone else.
Right, and the MERS plan is municipal employment retirement system, right, Jim? Municipal employment. Employees retirement system. And that's a state plan. So the town has no discretion with those funds. They tell us how much we need to put into the state pension for our employees that are under that pension system. Because that's a rather large increase, too, from $1,008,000 in the 2013 budget to $1,179,306
Right.
for total pensions.
Social Security account, $490,831. And the unemployment security, $5,000. Unfunded liability, sick and vacation, $86,700. Budget committee, we have $250. Grand total, financial administration, $4,843,769.
And we put that $250 so we could be TV stars next year.
We usually have nothing. Now we have protection of person and property. And we'll start with the fire departments. The salary account, $2,258,558. Operating expenses of $370,585. For a total for the fire department of $2,629,143. Police department, we have salaries of $2,542,615. We have general contracted mandated expenses of operation totals, $226,250.
I just want to point here on page 13, here is where you see all the line items for the school resource officer. You'll see the salary on page 13 on the second line, you'll see that the salary for the school resource officer is $41,996. And then down some lines, you'll see holiday pay. That total line item for holiday pay is $129,855. That includes monies for holiday pay for the new school resource officer. And the same with sick leave buyback, state psychological test, clothing allowance, health and wellness. All of those line items have monies built into it for the school resource officer.
Okay. Page 14. The total on the operational for police is 226,250. Animal control, 76,343. For total police department of 2,977,608. Harbor and coastal management, $2,300. Harbor master, $17,725.
No pump-out boat.
No pump-out boat yet.
No, the council didn't have that in either. There was some back and forth on that, but
Streetlights, on page 15, 150,000. The hydrant services, 1,500. For grand total property and personal, person and property, protection to personal and property, 5,778,276. Grants and health, library services, 462,037. Eastern Rhode Island Corp., 1,200. Health and Human Services Organizations for 15,000. And there is a new one in there, Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District. Wildlife Rehab, 200. For a grand total, grants and health, 478,437. Public Works, continue down to page 16. Operational totals.
no, the salaries total
I'm
on
sorry.
page 15 is,
Totals on the 548,249. The
right.
salaries. And then we go to page 16. Operational totals, 515,000. Department salaries and operational totals, 1,063,249.
So I can just jump in here for a minute, because it's that 515,000 DPW operating expenses that resolution number 5 gets to.
Right.
So if there's money left over in supplies, that money can be rolled over into paving. If there's money left over from tree removal, that money can get rolled over to tree removal. But, let me just, paving, sorry. Just to go back up to the previous page, page 15, if there's 15,000 allocated for sick leave for salaries in the DPW, if that isn't all used, that does not get to be rolled over into paving. It's only these line items within the operating expenses on page 16 here that have that carry forward to paving, if Resolution 5 passes,
Passes.
which we highly
Recommend.
recommend.
Landfill closure account, as you can see, was zeroed out. Stormwater management, 7,000. On-site wastewater management, 20,000. Rubbish recycle collection, 596,000. Landfill operations, it's continued on to page 17. And that total is 199,733. The building maintenance, 110,056. The grand total for public works, $1,996,038. Page 18. These are associated activities, the town committees, 11,225. Senior citizens services, 104,620. A grand total of associated activities, 115,845. On page 19, Beaches, 39,000, these are parks and recreation, 39,900. Summer recreation, 32,200. Winter recreation, $875. Maintenance supplies and mowing, $37,463. The Red Cross Swim Program, $2,425. Recreation Coordinator, $8,550. For a grand total of Parks and Recreation of $121,413. Now, this is where you're going to see on page 19, the school resource officer offset, and that's the $50,400 credit. The total school expenses are $28,729,425. Total municipal expenses, $18,419,880. For the grand total, general fund expenses, $47,149,305.
So that's the line item expense budget that will become the expense budget if you vote yes on resolution number one,
Resolution number 1. The state funding sources
under the revenue.
on page 20. We have total from state sources, $7,110,699. And local funding sources, non-property tax, continues all the way on to...
Right, these are all the line item revenue accounts. This is where we anticipate
all the income.
all the, other than property tax.
Other than property.
So all the licenses, dog licenses, gambling permits, blah, blah, blah. There was a change in how some of them are accounted for. You'll see that footnote on page 21. And then on page 22, after we have all the line items, you'll see the subtotal there for local receipts. So you say total from local sources, non-property tax, for 2014 is $2,573,640. And then the state, which came before that, was $9,684,339. So that's your total non-property tax revenue. Plus the total tax levy, less the amount of abatements, the tax money that we expect will not be collected, hence uncollectible, leaves the total property tax receipts at $37,464,966.
And all this can be found on page 2.
Right.
Right. But here, you'll see that the grand total for general fund revenues is $47,149,305. So the total line item budget, general fund revenue budget, that total, $47,149,305, it sounds familiar because you go back to page 19 and look, total expenses are $47,149,305. So there's your balanced
That's the
budget.
balanced budget.
Which is also at the top of page 2.
Correct.
I have a question on the state funding source. All of those, you say, go into the town's general fund?
Correct.
So if any of those items are higher than what's listed here, it will go into the general fund
Mhm.
as a savings that would be projected for the following year, correct?
Not education aid.
Not education aid. And not school housing aid, the bond money. I think the point, it all goes into the general fund.
Right.
And then at the end, education aid is treated differently.
So if the education aid doesn't come in, the taxpayers are expected to supplement it.
Correct.
But if excess education aid comes in, the taxpayers don't get the benefit. It goes straight to the school department.
It doesn't go
Isn't that
straight
style?
to, it doesn't go straight to the school department. It goes into the general fund. If those monies come in higher than anticipated. It goes into the general fund, and it's restricted for school use. So the following year, they can decrease the amount of money they're asking for an appropriation, or they can use it for capital improvements like they're doing now to save us money in the budget.
And
If they don't get it in the specific year,
From my understanding, no, because it hasn't been appropriated.
and actually, Jim, I think you looked at this one, and
The general laws are clear. If, your example, Roger, that that aid comes in greater than the 5,755,375, anything above that, under the general laws, is reserved to the school department. It doesn't stay in the general fund for the use of the town. It is reserved to the schools.
but is it reserved for the schools for the following year so that the taxpayers benefit from it the following year?
Again, the general laws are pretty clear that if there is a surplus, the schools cannot be punished. That is, that surplus cannot be used for the next year's appropriation. That surplus is a surplus to be used by the schools. I'm just telling you what my understanding of the general laws are and what I went through when I was town treasurer, because quite often, Roger, as you point out, at the end of the year, more money would come in, and it comes in increments. It comes in not in all one sum. And sometimes at the end of the year, you find out that, gee, that's more than what the docket forecast. And I was directed in writing by the town solicitor to make sure that money went over to the school department, that money above and beyond what was forecast on the docket. And I don't believe the general laws have changed since then. And as you point out, if the amount is less than forecasted in the docket, whether this year or 5 or 10 years ago, then yes, the town makes up the difference.
But for 20 years, when people have made the claim that the taxpayers are required to make up the difference of any state shortfall in anticipated funds, for 20 years I have said, I don't believe it. You tell me the RIGL in the statement, and for 20 years I have not gotten an answer, so I still don't believe it. That's a matter of selective interpretation. In other words, people have chosen to interpret the words differently than what the word said. So when you ask them for the statement in the RIGL, which I've done for 20 years, even at financial town meetings, you can go back to recordings where I have asked when people claim things like that. And for 20 years, I have not gotten an RIGL number or a specific statement.
okay.
It's obvious it's selective interpretation.
Just,
I don't know how else.
I am astounded that you have not been handed a copy of the Rhode Island general
I
law.
have looked at all the Rhode Island general laws, and I have not been able to find that statement.
When
okay.
Again, when I was the town treasurer, I was told by the town solicitor in writing, and maybe the letters are still in the treasurer's office,
I have.
that these are the general laws, and with the citation, and you're free to read it, and you might conclude otherwise. I don't think so, because you're pretty savvy.
Well, I'm a tech writer. I only go by the words. I don't selectively interpret.
Okay, I just want to, I have a question on the educational aid. Is that the number we get from RIDE?
Yes,
And that number's been pretty accurate.
correct. With the new state
With-
funding
With the new state
formula.
funding formula that they have, that number's been
Much better.
extremely close to what,
Within 12,000?
$12,000.
19,000 last year.
So the numbers are getting much closer with the new formula that they have, so.
All right, so if you approve Resolution 1, pages
1 through
3
22,
through
22.
3 through 19 will be the general fund expense budget, and 20, 21, and 22 will become the general fund revenue budget.
Okay?
Okay? And then we put informational summaries in the docket, some of which are pretty familiar. This revenue budget summary has been around for a long time.
Is that the state funding sources? Is that the?
Right, on page
On page
I-1,
I-1.
informational, the first
Right.
I-1.
It's a 6.8% increase at $365,091.
On the education
On the
aid, yeah.
educational, yeah. The total from state sources, 5.9% increase is $399,280. The total from local sources, non-property tax, 0.04 decrease is $10,010. And the total anticipated state and local funding, non-property tax, 4.2% is $389,270. With the total estimated tax levy at $37,519,966, or 2.2, is $803,750. And the total revenues at $47,149,305, or the 2.8, is an increase of $1,288,020.
Right. I've always been a fan, I mean, just because I'm a wonk, but I like this summary because it takes out all the tobacco license, gambling permits, all of those little line items get rolled into one bucket under the local funding sources, and the second line there for municipal departmental fees. So you can see what the big local revenue sources are, or the ones that are worth breaking out. Like third from the bottom is the Tiverton Power Plant that we have a tax agreement with, so that's the revenue we expect from them. Just gives you a sense of where the money is coming from that's a little cleaner than seeing,
And if we go to I-2, the total school, it's 2.9, 28,729,425, 2.9, 812,028. The subtotal municipal general expenditures, 3,629,20. It's a negative 0.02% of $8,473
yeah, for the debt service.
for the debt service. And then if you look at the bottom, the subtotal of $14,798.60, or 3.4%, is $484,465. Total municipal at $18,419,880, or 2.7, is $475,982. And the total general fund expenditures, $47,149,305, or 2.8, is $1,288,020. And that's the same as you're going to see on page 11.
Right, if you think back to
47
those,
million.
right,
So the total revenues and the total expenditures
are equal.
are equal, and that's the balance budget.
Right. If you think back to those two charts that we showed for the bottom line, the expenses and the revenues with the pieces of the pie, that's where these numbers come from. There's the expenses and there's the revenue.
Okay. Total school education expenses, that's on I-3, $28,729,425, 2.9%.
You can see the breakdown
And-
here of how the school budget is approved by the state, by RIDE, and they have a different accounting system than the town's general fund, and it's called the Uniform Charter of Accounts, and anyone can get on and look at the detail. It makes it possible to compare school budgets across the state. It's very detailed, but we present this in the docket, although the Budget Committee has no control over how the school uses their money. They have stuck to this budget, and this budget is approved by the state, so gives you some information on how their money is budgeted. And then on the bottom, you see the capital items that they're doing with prior year's appropriations.
And that comes to 775, 745.
Right. So that's $775,745 that's not in the budget,
Right.
that's being done with money left over from prior year's appropriations.
I-4, debt service, $3,629,20, negative .02.
Yeah, this is a different, just so that people are aware, this is a finer breakdown of the municipal expense summary, so you can see percentage increase and decreases by departments. So it's the same departmental totals you saw on the detail expense budget that Dave read off, but you get to see a little more information on, you get to see the percent changes for each total line on the docket.
And I think it's nice to see that, the percentages and the changes.
It's just
Capital,
another-
$435,045, 30.3%.
And that's something that we highlighted before, yeah. And pages I-4 through I-6.
All numbers that we've gone over before.
Right, they're
Only
summarizing.
they're showing
Right.
a little bit of detail and with percentages.
Is this docket available online now?
Nancy? Is it available online?
Yes, it's been online for, it's up on the website, you mean?
Yeah,
Yes, it should be right
on
under
the
that
main page?
bullet, yes.
Because I looked for it the other day.
Look under the FTR bullet, everything I have for the FTR is put under that.
Oh.
And yes, I believe she put that up Friday, I believe. I'll check it later.
I should just say that into the microphone, that this docket is available online on the main page under the FTR highlighted section on the home page.
Okay.
Are we
Page.
moving on?
There it is.
I-7?
Yes.
Another breakdown. And the first box, we have the total fund balance. And again, this all relates to the previous, the audit on page 15. The $3,434,795, less the amount restricted for school use of $1,289,385, less the total amount committed for municipal use of $354,555. The unassigned general fund balance, $1,798,855. Recommended total general fund expense budget, $47,149,305. And that's a multiplier percent by 3.5%. The amount to reserve, $1,650,226. The unassigned general fund balance, $1,790,855, less the amount to reserve of $1,650,229. Projected general fund available reserves is $140,629.
Right, what this box does is give you a sense of how much money is available in the
Yep.
general fund to offset taxes,
Homepage, FTR, it's good.
Which we won't have to touch.
which right, because it's a little over 100,000 if you follow the policy goal of reserving at least 3.5%.
The maximum tax levy,
To show our due diligence that, yes, we did check and we're absolutely under the
absolutely under the
4%
budget.
increase
so,
by a
by
lot.
$654,000. And impact of additional to expense budgets, and that's adding expenses to the budget in the amount of $100,000 would result in an increase to the total tax levy of 0.27%, the real intangible tax rate in the amount of 5 cents, and the required general fund reserve in the amount of $3,500.
It gives you a
So a
sense of what
nickel-
happens if you add 100,000 or take away 100,000.
Right. Page I-8. And I think this is
This is the chart that, the tables, it's not really a chart, it's tables that Mr. Dave mentioned earlier.
At the beginning, I think these are very important to look at, and Laura has a good explanation of them. I've sat with her many a time.
We did this last year, the Budget Committee did for the first year, and we tried to put some bar charts together to explain it, and it is complicated, but what it does is just look at the budget over the past 10 years. Not the audited numbers, not what actually we spent or what actually came in as revenue. It was what was budgeted and approved at financial town meetings and at last year's financial town referendum. And it breaks it into, it looks on one side, on the left-hand side there, you'll see the total budget, and then you'll see a block for the expenses, broken out the same way that those earlier charts had them, with school, debt service, and municipal. And then you see the big block on the right, that's the revenue sources. The first column being what we budgeted to receive from state funds, what we budgeted to receive from local sources or local receipts. When we had the luxury of withdrawing money from the general fund, you'll see those withdrawals there. And then you'll see a column there in italics, which is a total. So that's non-tax revenues. And then you'll see a column for what was explicitly approved, which we didn't usually do at financial town meetings, but we did at one for abatements and uncollectibles. We're doing it now, but we hadn't in the past. And then we see what the tax levy is. And it goes back 10 years, and this first block is just a lot of numbers, and it's kind of hard to discern.
But I think the important one here
Well,
to
then you
look
go,
at is,
right,
from
then you go.
2008, we haven't had to withdraw any money from the general
Right,
fund.
we haven't withdrawn money from the general fund. The last time we did that was in 2008. There hasn't been monies available. And we'll show you why when we get to the next page. The next big section here is the percent of total. That gets to the allocation charts that we showed you earlier. You can see, if you go down percent of total down to the last line there, 2013, you can see this is where those numbers came from. The school is 61% of the budget, debt service is 8% of the total budget, and municipal was 31% of the total budget in 2013. That's where those numbers came from. Same with the revenue.
And again, if you look back, from 2008, 2009, they haven't really changed that much.
Right, it takes a lot to move it, but you can look back to, if you look back to 2003, you can see that the school was 65% of the budget in 2003, and now it's 61%. Whereas debt back in 2003 was less than 2%, and now it's 8%. So there's been some changes, but it doesn't move in big chunks unless we have, like, a lot of debt service come on.
Which we don't want.
Okay, so then, using these same numbers on the top, all those budget numbers on the top are the foundation for the next page, foundation for the numbers in the percent of total, and it's also for the foundation for the next two boxes. The first one is the year-over-year dollar change. So you can see from fiscal year 3 to fiscal year 4, right on that first line, there was a $1.6 million increase in the total budget. School went up $980,000, debt service went up $77,000, and municipal was up $575,000 from fiscal year 2003 to fiscal year 2004. And if you go through those different lines, what I find, what Dave was talking about earlier, you can see if you go down to 0809, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line down, you can see that all of a sudden, we had no more general fund monies to pull out, right? So that was a loss of, quote, loss of $900,000. And that year, our local tax dollar, local receipts, local sources was down $371,000. So the total non-tax monies, revenues, were down $1.1 million. So it's no surprise that the tax levy went up. because something's got to cover it, right? And then if you look down that column of state funds from the revenue budget, you can see that 09-10, from fiscal year '09 to fiscal year 2010, which you see the first big loss in the state funds. We lost $752,000, and then the next time period from 10 to 11, lost $1.5 million in state funds. So you combine that with the debt for the bonds, the school bonds coming on, and it's no wonder that we saw such a large increase in the tax levy. What you see in the next box is the percentage increases. And then there are 5- and 10-year averages on the bottom. So going way over to the right-hand column in the bottom box, going down that final column, those are the increases in the total tax levy, percentage increases over the annual time periods. The 10-year average annual percent increase in the budgeted tax levy, not the actual, the budgeted, was 6.4%. And Budget Committee's recommendation this year is 2.2. Point to point, from 2003 to 2013, the increase in the tax levy was 85%, which is a lot. But considering how much revenue we lost and the $30 million bond coming on the books, I mean, there's a lot going on. And you can see that over the past 5 years, the average annual increase is 5.5, and point to point from 2008 to 2013, right? That's 5 years?
Yep.
That increase is 17.4%, point to point. So the trend is getting better.
I think it's a great chart to look at, and as you mentioned, if we put a 2% increase this year, or 2.2
2.2% in the tax levy,
tax levy.
not the tax rate, the
No,
tax levy.
We can hopefully continue to get that number driven downward. And that's by all working together between the town council and the school committee and the budget committee. Any other questions? Mr. Bettis?
I noticed that the state funds went up 8% over the last 10 years, and the tax levy almost doubled. Is that because of all the state investment into the Secana Bridge maintenance?
That's for another meeting.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Be there.
Actually. I don't think this will be broadcasted that quick, but there is a meeting on Thursday at the State House. Yes.
So what kind of a turnout do you expect, seeing you have just one budget to present to taxpayers?
Well, we hope that people are still going to come out. We still have to vote on it. So
And don't you
we're
think one
we're
vote-
recommending that people come out.
Yeah, the proposal, you're right, it's a vote for one, there's no option to vote no, but the resolutions are accepted, approve or reject.
Mhm.
You're saying there's no option to vote no?
Correct.
If you sign up to vote, go into the voting booth and don't check off anything, isn't that a no vote?
It could be interpreted as a no vote, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the framers of the
There should be a
referendum.
way to vote no.
I think the framers of the
Financial.
referendum proposal thought that, that the vehicle for that was a petition. At least from what I remember of the public hearings and the documentation of it, that was the intent.
By petition, do you mean an alternate budget being
Correct.
proposed?
Correct.
Well, since there was no publicity on when you could submit the alternate vote, and since the budget committee's vote, the budget committee's docket has not adequately been publicized, I don't consider that a viable option.
Well,
It looks like, from what I'm hearing tonight, the last opportunity was yesterday, and we're finding that out tonight. that if you didn't submit one yesterday before you got a copy of the docket, or before it was published, then you can't do it, because yesterday was the last day.
Well, it was the same as last year, and nothing has changed. And we have to submit our proposal by April 7th. And as a budget committee, that's what we did.
Right, I think, and it's also important to note, this is not a requirement of the charter. The Budget Committee is doing this informational session because we think it's a necessary thing to do. But, you know, the charter doesn't require. I mean, I think Mrs. Mello has talked about it at council meetings, and,
I've talked about it at every council meeting since I've started this. It's been announced under the clerk item on the council at every one, including the ones you've been here at, Mr. Dennis. Every one of the last few ones. I have always stated that the deadline for alternate petitions was April 23rd at 4 o'clock.
I never heard it.
Okay. Any other questions?
What's
I
our
don't
take
advertise
on
it in the paper.
What's our cut gonna be on the tolls on this county bridge?
That's not for discussion here.
Are we all done?
Okay, thank you very much.
If there's nothing
And
else.
don't forget to go out and vote.
yes, we have just two dates coming up. Thursday, May 2nd, at the high school is the official financial town hearing that's required by the charter. And then Tuesday, May 21st is the voting day.
Thank you for this meeting, it was very
David,
informative.
can I just
Second.
make-
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Nancy,
Can
do
I
you
just
want,
make one comment?
Nancy, come up.
Oh, I do think it's very important that people get out to vote at the financial town referendum. Whether there is one petition, there happens to be 5 different resolutions, because this town overwhelmingly voted to go to an FTR. So they should go and support the idea that we are holding FTRs. Whether there's one petition on there or 5 petitions, it's still the process that we have elected to happen. So they should, you know, I encourage them all to get out there. They should get out and try to show the support of the idea of having an FTR versus an FTM.
Do you want to take this opportunity briefly to say where the voting places are, or you'll do that at May 2nd?
Why don't we do it at May 2nd?
Okay.
It'll be closer to the voting time.
Okay.
Because you don't actually go until the 21st.
Actually, I think it was done at the council meeting on Monday night.
I have also said that, talked about the combined polls, all at the council meetings as well. You probably would leave by then, Mr. Dennis, because my portion for it is towards the end.
I was here.
I'm sure, and Michelle.
I was here. Ms. Shackle was here.
And Mr. Gonzalez.
I was here.
I was here.